What's poppin', y'all? DaBaby's rollout for Baby on Baby 2, along with the subsequent tour, have been nothing short of both commercial disaster and a PR disaster. The narrative surrounding DaBaby right now is that he's fallen off beyond repair. Anything clowning him will generate tons of positive engagement, and anything giving him some type of credit will flop. But today we're going to explore from a fair point of view if DaBaby has actually fallen off with real numbers, not just anecdotes, and events we may not even know to be true. The narrative around DaBaby started changing in 2020. Hey, this guy just uses the same flow on every song. While untrue, it caught steam and became the go-to line for the majority of DaBaby haters, even after he released Rockstar, which went number one with no resemblance to Suge at all. DaBaby was still having crazy commercial success, so it didn't really harm him, but the narrative was growing. His album Blame It On Baby sold 124K first week, and while lower than the previous year's album Kirk, it was a solid sales week. This would receive mixed reviews and some pushback from DaBaby fans though, citing it as a weak release for him. But the show goes on. Things got bad for DaBaby while at a Rolling Loud performance in the summer of 2021. That people ran with some comments he made, which were relatively vague, but people ascribed him a label and wanted him to bend over, pun intended, and apologize, which he didn't really do. Doubled down, lost a lot of bookings, then somewhat apologized, and a bunch of other back and forth stuff. But fast forward to when we first started to see glimmers of DaBaby's hype, and fans not being what they once were, and that was August of this year when a DaBaby show in New Orleans was canceled because the promoter said that fewer than 500 tickets were sold. Keep in mind, this show was meant to be done at the Smoothie King Arena in New Orleans, which is a venue with a capacity of 14,000, and the tickets were only $35 each. It's also something to note that in DaBaby's most recent tour, he didn't even go to the state of Louisiana. So this lends to the promoter probably having said something which was true and not made up or hyperbole. This spread like wildfire throughout social media though, clowning DaBaby, saying his fall off was here, and much, much more. But he soldiered through it, didn't really say too much and kept doing his thing, but people were waiting on the next DaBaby project, which was on its way. On September 23rd, 2022, DaBaby did a surprise album release for the follow-up to the album that put him on the map, Baby on Baby 2. This was an odd decision because after not having a hit this year, and the narrative being that you fell off, you would think DaBaby would at least do a traditional rollout and build some hype. But he didn't. Instead, the most shocking part of the album and part of the rollout was on one of the songs when he reveals that he was smashing Megan Thee Stallion too, while using a Megan Thee Stallion lookalike for the music video. This was a bold move to make, leaving the rollout of your album to hang on the coattails of saying you messed with Megan Thee Stallion when she wasn't even selling like that anymore, and it didn't work out too well. There was a lot of conversation around the line, but didn't translate to much streams or sales, as he would sell a career low since he first went mainstream with only 17,000 copies sold first week. A flop. DaBaby was set to go on a tour for this album, and this is where the fall-off narrative continued to gain steam. When a post went up on social media pointing out that DaBaby was selling buy one get one free tickets, an attempt to drive up ticket sales for that particular city, which people attributed to him not being able to sell tickets. This was for his Birmingham, Alabama show that was a 1,200 cap venue. Not the greatest look, although people didn't mention the venue, city, or capacity. But DaBaby continued on tour until another hiccup came up. A girl would go on Twitter saying DaBaby came to her job giving out tickets. He came to my job yesterday to give out free tickets, left and came back with a cameraman. Why is he here again? Did y'all accept the tickets? And are y'all going? Someone replied. Nah, a couple of my coworkers accepted them. His friend asked me and my friend if we wanted some and started to hand them to us, but we said no thanks. I like his music, just didn't feel like going. An important part of this is we don't even have definitive proof that DaBaby handed out tickets. I believe it's true, but there's no legitimate proof of it. This girl gave a fair enough story and said she likes his music, and she gave an actual story with actual proof of him actually being there for us to say, okay, this seems true. And the reason why I have to preface this is because we also know DaBaby walks around with a cameraman to record everything going on in his life. He even caught the jumping of Danny Lay's brother on camera at a bowling alley. The reason why I say not to just believe it as face value is because another chick put up a fake tweet after this saying, DaBaby literally dropped off 100 tickets at my mom's job, and they've been sitting on the front desk for 2 weeks. ... All 100. This tweet has over 150,000 likes. The majority of people believe it to be real. But there is no reason to believe that it is real because not only is there no proof, no follow-up, no story like the first girl who I said I believe, this is an actual fake tweet. This chick just promotes her business on Twitter and tries to engagement farm all the time. And do you seriously think not a single person is going to take a DaBaby ticket? But that's the problem when you let a narrative get out of control. Even fake stories are believed because they sound like they're real, they sound like it would make sense, which further fan the flames of said narrative. But let's do what nobody else has done and take an objective look at DaBaby's current tour in comparison to his previous one. Some context here. I give some flack to artists who blew up during 2020 to 2021 when it comes to touring. They weren't able to take advantage. But that was not DaBaby. He already had a huge hit and 2 projects out with a tour for Kirk before 2020 hit and people were locked down. Then he had a massive smash hit with Rockstar, so he should come out bigger than he was before. But let's run the numbers, or at least the same level that he was before. These are headlining tours online, the Kirk versus Baby on Baby 2 tour. I tried to correspond with the same cities and their venue caps, then versus now, to get an accurate view of DaBaby's tour demand right now. A lot of the cities were different this time, but I was able to get a handful that were the same city. Let's get right into it. In the Minneapolis area of Minnesota, DaBaby's previous tour, several years ago, had a stop at Myth Live, which held a capacity for 3,000 people, versus this tour, which he performed at the Fillmore, Minneapolis, with the 1,500 capacity. 50% drop. For the purpose of this, we're going to assume the venues sold out, then and now. In New York City, DaBaby's previous tour, he performed at Terminal 5, which is a 3,000 cap venue, versus now Irving Plaza, which is a 1,200 cap venue. More than 50% drop. In Atlanta, he had done the Coca-Cola Roxy for 3,600 people, versus now the Tabernacle, which is a 2,600 capacity. Detroit, Michigan, Old Baby performed at the Royal Oak Music Theater with a 1,700 cap, and now it was actually an increase to the Fillmore with a 2,900 cap. And in Los Angeles, DaBaby went from the Shrine Expo Hall for 6,300 people to the Novo for 2,400 people. Just for a decent frame of reference, the Novo was performed at and sold out or near sold out by both Pusha T and Cordae, which we would probably agree are much smaller artists who have never had a single hit, let alone multiple hits as big as DaBaby's. Yet they were still able to pack out the same venue that he just did. Looking at the numbers for a lot of these venues, you can see there is a big drop in the size. A lot of the venues were a 50% drop in people, with Los Angeles being almost 60%. So objectively looking at this, DaBaby has fallen off. If his album sold only 17K, but he was able to sell out the same venues or even larger venues, we would be able to say, look, perhaps the album didn't do that well, but the demand to see DaBaby live is clearly still here. The proof is in the pudding. The hardest thing to do is sell tickets to shows, and he's packing them out. But that wasn't the case. This makes me think that it was probably a good idea for Roddy Ricch to go as an opener on tour for Post Malone again after his Live Life Fast album. Roddy was previously an opener for Post Malone's tour several years ago and never gone on his own headlining tour. And if he did, I don't think it would have gone much differently from DaBaby's right now. He hasn't even built up a touring base yet like DaBaby did. But does that mean there's no longer any hope for DaBaby? I definitely don't think so. But this narrative needs to be combated better by his team. It doesn't seem like they're spending enough money pushing out the freestyles DaBaby has been doing, the wholesome moments that he's had on his current tour, which just ended. And to give DaBaby credit, the people that have attended these shows are saying it was a great time and performance. While I have been critical of DaBaby in the past for his actions, a lot of things I found disrespectful with how he treated other people, we have to give a level of respect for him to continue on this tour instead of just canceling to save face and saying he was sick or wanted to spend time with family, like a lot of other rappers have done. If DaBaby, who was on the cusp of being a superstar several years ago, is putting on a show every night, for a smaller audience than when he first got in the game, and is still willing to do person-to-person street promotion, handing out tickets like before he was even famous, his actions speak louder than words. Those are the actions of a humble rapper who doesn't believe he's too big to do the things that originally got him on. And that's evidenced by the continued freestyles he keeps dropping on his Instagram, which are getting slept on like crazy. It looks like he might probably release a mixtape very soon. DaBaby is definitely fallen off, but it's nowhere near close to being over. I still consider him, skill-wise, one of the best rappers to come up in the past 3 years. His personality and enthusiasm are also something that can captivate people. He has the mentality and work ethic of someone who's not just going to crawl into a ball because he's no longer as poppin' as he once was. He just needs to do more things that make him likable to get his old fans back on his side, keep constantly releasing good music, and for the love of God, have his team do something to combat these often false narratives on social media.